Hello and welcome to another quick run through and demonstration of some of the advanced functionality that's available as part of the ArcSight ESM real-time correlation platform. In this particular example, I'm going to talk about pattern discovery, also known as threat detector. Now, it's a fantastic feature, and it's one that's been around for a long period of time, but it's one of those things that not many customers are aware of as a capability. Just for reference, it is a licensed component. If it is licensed, you actually have it appear, and it'll appear in the resource list. If you don't have the license for it, then it won't appear. But what you can do is you can see the demonstration here as I walk through the functionality. And if you'd like to take a closer look, then of course you can request a demonstration license to do so. Now, what is a pattern discovery mechanism? Well, it actually consists of three different parts: a profile, the snapshot, and the pattern. Now, I'm going to talk through each one of these as we need it, but I'm going to start with the profile. The profile defines what the kind of pattern I'm looking for, the kind of things I'm looking for. So in this particular example, we can see I've already got one, browsing pattern detector, and we've got this over here. Now, what is it? In this particular case, let's just talk through the pattern aspect of things. Now, the pattern length indicates the number of particular distinct events that must occur. Now, you probably wouldn't want to have 3. 5 is probably the relevant number. That's a sequence of 5 or more events which matches the pattern would be considered to be a specific pattern. 3 is great from a demonstration point of view, which is what I'm going to do. And then we have the pattern occurrences. So you want this pattern to occur a number of times. Again, in this particular instance, I'm actually only doing this as 3. Again, you probably wouldn't want to do that either, but I just want to generate some patterns from my demonstration data to show you that. And then finally, we want to have the start and end time. So in this case, I'm actually just doing 3 hours back. We have a description of the events that we want to look at here. So we're going to use the name as the unique field. Again, you probably want to restrict that down to combinations of source and destination IP addresses, but we're actually doing that on source and host names here. And then you don't want to restrict it on the particular events. Now, in this particular case, I'm actually just doing the internal filter that's defined that just says non-ArcSight internal events. So non-correlation, non-audit, that kind of event. So it's anything that's an external event. Now, you would probably want to set a particular set of patterns up for looking for browsing activity. So looking for proxy data. So you'd have it restricted by filter by proxy. And then you'd also probably want to do it restriction by maybe even filter of a location or an asset or a network zone. So types of activity from workstations, for example, and have that restricted by filter. You could do this across all data, but if in doing so, you're actually going to churn through a lot of data. Pattern discovery as a feature has gone through some considerable performance increases recently in the more recent releases, so it is absolutely possible to do so. But again, it's from an investigation point of view. You want to manage how many patterns are created, what kind of patterns they relate to, and then manage that accordingly rather than anything else. We'll actually keep the snapshots, because what we're doing as part of the snapshot, we will create the patterns and link that with the data, so we can do that from an investigation. But you want to manage that so we can retain the retention. Where do we want to put the snapshots? Where do we want to put the patterns as well? So that's what in this particular case, what a pattern it can actually create. What we can also do is we can assign it to create an action should it find a pattern. If it doesn't find a pattern, it won't do this. So in this case, I'm actually only going to just send a notification. But what I could do is I could do a number of different things here. So I can add and remove from lists and so on. So that's actually incredibly powerful from that point of view. But in this particular case, I'm actually just going to go ahead and run my pattern. So we can see the first thing it does is it schedules it. It then builds the snapshot, saves that particular snapshot, including the patterns that have been discovered, and then extracts those ready for an investigation point of view. Now, there we go. We can see that there's 2 particular patterns that it's identified. Now, in this recording, I did not speed that up. That's done 3 hours worth of data. It's done it quickly and simply. Like I say, performance increase as part of the new versions make this a viable solution to looking at large volumes of data for patterns. So we look at our snapshots, we can see that there's 2 particular snapshots that are being created, and we can see that matches this particular one here. So we can see these particular patterns have been detected. Now, remember it said about 3 and 3. So minimum pattern length of 3. So there's one of 3, and there's one of 6. So that meets the criteria, and it must occur at least 3 times. So in this case, we can start at the top, and we can see it's supported by 7. So it sees that there's at least 7 instances or 7 occurrences, and it actually matches all of those. Slightly different in this one, so we can see the support is 6, but actually there's only 4 that match all 3 events at that point. That just explains what it's doing there. It's a very simple pattern statistical analysis here. It's actually learning it as part of the process to actually understand what the patterns are. Now, we actually want to investigate in these. So I'm actually going to look at some of these investigations now. So I should double click on that. And I get my investigation panel here. So we can see what the pattern is. We can see what the items are. So we can see there's 3 different types of events. And it shows you the combinations of the transactions involved. So in this particular case, we can see the source and information in here that regards the what's actually occurred. We can see the time spread as well of how that's frequently occurred. Now, in this case, it's across 20 odd seconds or so with regards to this particular sequence. But the point is you're doing this over a longer period of time, that pattern could be detected over multiple hours at that point. So it allows you that capability. What you can do as part of this is you can actually investigate on this. So you can look at the pattern, you can show an event graph to show what the sequence is involved, and you can actually show any related events as well. I could even create a rule. So in fact, if I just press that little button here, I can show this. So if I decided this was a pattern that I want to do something with, I can create a rule. I jump straight into the rule editor and I just show you the conditions. It matches those conditions. It matches the aggregation across the time frame that's been defined, and then all I would do is just allocate the actions. So I could do that very quickly and very easily just to create a rule from a particular pattern that I've identified. So it's actually a very powerful feature I could have. However, what I might want to do is I might want to define that this is a particular pattern that doesn't mean anything, it doesn't do anything for me, and actually could be ignored. So the way we manage this is we'd actually use it using the annotations functionality here. So we'd actually look at this annotation, and so it's set to be queued to start with. So actually I've defined that this can be ignored. So I'm actually going to set this to be closed. So I said it'd be closed. Press OK. That means that is now closed as a pattern. So if I jump back to my pattern discovery and look at my patterns, I can see there's a whole bunch load of patterns have been identified. So I had 3 before, I've got 2 now. So by running the pattern every time, when I find something, it's actually going to put it in there as a pattern. But what I've done with this particular one, I've annotated as closed. It'll still create the pattern. It'll still see that because it still matches the criteria we've defined. But the point is I've actually set it to be closed. And what the system does is when it does detect that it's been closed, it will actually add any subsequent data into the transaction list here with regards to the pattern, and update it with the relevant information as well, but it won't change the annotation against that particular pattern as well. So it'll update it, it'll identify there's more sequences of that, but how do you actually look at this? Well, the whole point here is that you actually have a look at this particular pattern here, and you do it with pattern with filter, and then I would actually define what I want to do here. So I could just look at queued, and it would just show me one, as we'd already closed the other one. So that's how you would actually filter out the view, and you just have a dashboard or a view that would have that with it filtered and only showing a particular stage. Of course, with an annotation, I can assign that to a different user and administrator within the system, so they can sit and analyze the details and make sure what's going on. So we do want those patterns to be detected, absolutely. We want them to be updated because that's data we want to capture, but additionally we don't want to act on that, so we can see that it's closed accordingly. So just to show, when I go back to my notifications, of course, when I did set this to trigger when it identified a pattern, it sent me a couple of notifications here. So I could see that, and I could trigger some actions as well as part of that, just to do something with regards to what's been discovered. So as you can see, the whole idea of just jumping back to the profiles, you define your profile, which creates a snapshot which actually has everything in it, and then it has the individual patterns that you would then look at and investigate. The point is here that you'd run this at a sequence, typically maybe every day, maybe half day or so, typically in a low period of time, so we're not taking any cycles from any processing or data storage from that point of view. But we're creating those patterns, we're having those patterns constantly created. We'll then have a workflow mechanism where we can go in, we can do an investigation, we can look at the actual patterns that we're identifying, we can even chart and graph those particular events as well, so we can see what the sequencing is and how that occurs and what's actually mapping as part of that as well, and actually dig into this data as well. So it suddenly becomes an incredible, powerful mechanism to identify unusual sets of activity and actions across the systems being monitored and so on. And then we can turn those into rules if we want to. It's very simple and straightforward because, of course, we know the aggregation, we know the actual event names, and we know the time period that's been defined as well. So we can do this in a very simple and straightforward way, and anything that we want to ignore, we can just set the annotation to set it to be closed, and it won't appear again. So that's a very quick run through of some of the advanced functionality that's available within pattern discovery and some of the things that it can achieve. Thank you very much.